everybody. Happy Monday. We are going live today with Michali. We're just going to wait for some of you to join. I'm Michali. I'm 5 minutes late, so thank you for your patience, or maybe 7 minutes late at this point. Better late than ever. Definitely having a slower day. We're just going to wait for some of you to join. Thanks for joining. Zayat and Malki. We're just waiting for Michali. I was a few minutes late. Michali was probably ready on time, but I wasn't. Hello, Michali. Okay, let me invite you. 1 second. I see that you requested. Amazing. Accepted it. Let's see if that works. Hey, Michali. Let me move myself back.
Hi.
Hello. How are you? This has been forever.
It has been. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back. I was like debating, should I do this today? I'm so tired. Should I not? And I was like, this will be the one thing I accomplished today, and I'll feel really proud of myself.
You'd be like, okay, check, back to bed I go.
Exactly. I set my alarm for 35 minutes and woke up. I was like, where am I? Who am I? For 15 minutes, and I promised myself that I would go back. But now I feel much better. Did some stretching. Oh my goodness, jet lag is a real thing.
It's a real thing. And it's so funny. As you're talking, I'm thinking like, wouldn't it be really great and like such a great exercise if we all woke up and said to ourselves, where am I in my life? Who am I? That's the therapist in me. I'm like, that's such a good exercise. It's kind of like, just to borrow a Jewish concept, like Talaf Nemiata Omeid, it's like before davening, it's helpful to like orient yourself, to who you're doing this davening thing with, and so it's kind of like, it's a great way to orient yourself. Like, wait, who am I? Wait, where am I?
Totally. Yeah, it's a good like reset. Like every time you wake up, like you have a new chance to decide who you are and where you are and all that.
Yeah,
completely.
Exactly.
Anyways, thanks for being so accommodating with today, and let's hit the question. So it's actually a question that was asked on the AMAs. All the forum stuff were like kind of dealt with, so I figured we'll take this one. I don't think we've ever discussed something like this. So how to disconnect from a therapist I worked so hard to connect to. She left abruptly. That's all the information that we have. Obviously, I won't say the username because they're confidential as far as I'm concerned. So that was kind of the question. So disconnecting from a therapist that somebody felt connected to, and then the therapist had to leave abruptly for whatever reason.
Yikes. First of all, to whoever wrote this question, I'm so sorry that you had that experience. The first thought that comes to mind is, I know it sounds like it was incredibly abrupt, but was there like any warning at all? Did the therapist say anything in closing, in terminating, that created some sense of closure? I'd imagine just because this question is asked, the answer is no.
Mm-hmm. Or at least not enough. At least not enough.
At least not enough, yeah.
Right.
So counterintuitively, I would say go to therapy. Because this to me is an attachment issue. And it doesn't mean that you, as this person writing this question, have an attachment issue. But if you've attached, in a secure, healthy way to somebody like your therapist, and all of a sudden they go bye-bye, then your brain's gonna need some help and support just processing, wait, what just happened? And also, how do I fill this void, right? Like therapy, it fills a certain void in our lives where we have this like balancing and recalibration that goes on, and just this broadening and expansion of ourselves. And if that check-in, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, goes away, then I would say first and foremost, we need to have a healthy replacement instead of an unhealthy replacement. And I would say the first order of business, even before you go into trusting another replacement, is to put this out there and let them know that you're going to have a hard time trusting, and what are some things that you and that therapist can do together to make sure this doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. I would say the only thing that cannot be planned for is, unfortunately and tragically, if God forbid a therapist passes away suddenly. Mm-hmm. But basically in every other life scenario, I personally think, and take this with a grain of salt, that it's the job of a therapist to help their clients process and terminate, regardless of whether, if the client isn't ready to graduate, mm-hmm. then it's the therapist's job to really hold that client's hand and to help them get ready and transition to another therapist. To me, that's just being a responsible clinician. But again, take what I say with a grain of salt. That's purely my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think it's a very good opinion, but unfortunately
oh,
not
thank you.
everybody has those standards. But I think it should be, like standard practice. But again, like
Yeah,
it could be the therapist fell ill. It could be she had an emergency, whatever it could, it could be so many different things that we can't judge. But I 100% agree with you. I have like a follow-up question to this, which is, do you think that finding another therapist immediately is the next step? Because I kind of feel like it's like I guess it could go both ways, but part of me is like thinking it's like a rebound type of thing. It's like you're just going to desperately attach to anybody that is the therapist, versus are there skills that you can use to help yourself, have some sort of like closure or become okay with the situation, and then seek out an appropriate fit therapist versus just finding somebody out of like desperation to heal the trauma or the attachment issues from this previous therapeutic relationship.
great question. I would say it's a combination of the two. I don't think a person should ever desperately search for a therapist, whether they're in crisis or not. I think, I'm sorry for the background noise.
I
Um,
don't hear
um,
yeah.
what?
I didn't hear anything, so
Oh, great. Okay. I think that decision should always be very carefully made.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that in that case, it wouldn't be a rebound therapist. And here's the thing. I think that the ultimate healing that we can accomplish when we have been hurt in a relationship is to do the work in a relationship.
Mm,
And so I think that if there was an issue with me and myself, then I think the ultimate level of healing would be to heal that with myself, maybe with the guidance of other people, but like ultimately it would be between me and myself.
mhm.
And similarly, if someone's hurt me in a relationship, then the ultimate healing comes from being in a corrective, reparative kind of relationship. Now, I would say it's not necessarily healthy to trust the new therapist right away. This is something I tell new clients all the time. I say, there's no reason for you to trust me. I have zero expectations for you to trust me, because we tell kids all the time, don't trust strangers. So why should you trust me? If I
Exactly.
ask you a question that's too private, you can say, I'd rather not answer. And I would totally respect that.
Mhm.
Now, you mentioned also in this question of like, well, what happens if, let's say, someone is sick? Now,
Mhm.
unfortunately, as we've done in a live before, I mean, obviously, like, I don't represent all sicknesses, but I've been in position as a therapist where I've had to process with my clients my chronic illnesses and what that looks like for the therapeutic relationship. How am I going to show up? How am I not going to show up? The feelings of abandonment, the feelings of fear, the feelings of anger, right?
Mhm.
That can all exist towards a therapist who is sick and has to change the way that they're going about doing therapy or their availability.
Mhm.
That being said, again, I think it's the therapist's job and responsibility to really process that with the clients and to be very honest about what they can and cannot do, and then to have like a handoff so
Mhm.
that they're helping the client have that continuity of services, not just through themselves, but through other people.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, though, I think that the way to heal this is through other support in
Mhm.
again, a healthy relationship.
Love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. Like I learned so much. And I was thinking like, as you were saying those words, like we need to like extract this and like make it into a reel, like the way you said, how you need to, the best way to heal from a relationship is in the relationship, right? Like so many times, and I think we all fall into this pattern of like trying to talk our way out of things or think our way out of things, or even like self-cure our way out of things. But sometimes what we need to do is be in a situation that's exactly the situation we are afraid of or don't want to be in a healthier, more adaptive way. And through that, we can actually like overcome the challenge. So I love that. So I guess like maybe what would be also helpful is some just like one or two skills I'm thinking, and I don't have this in my head because my head is a little bit blank right now, but like what this client can do in the or this
Yeah,
client that's been abandoned, so to speak, in the interim, because obviously finding a therapist is not so simple. That's a good fit and appropriate and all that. And it sounds like this therapist did not leave her to transition smoothly to somebody, or maybe she didn't connect to that person or whatever it is. So in the interim, how do you disconnect? I guess the question is how to disconnect from a therapist I work so hard to connect with, I guess. So what are some skills? Like what would you say are the top skills that this client can use independently of other people, or independently of being in therapy, I should say, because we can use other
right.
people.
That is hard for me to answer because I don't know this person. I don't know what they were working on. I don't like some questions that come to mind for this person is like, well, what was hard for you to build with this therapist? Like if it was so hard for them to build that trust, what did that work entail? What was that process like? And what made it particularly challenging? Because that would point us in the direction of what they need. I would say in terms of, I can't necessarily recommend certain skills without knowing this person, but I can recommend certain mindsets and attitudes. And one is kind of just going back to what I said is like understanding what your rights are as a client and going in with your eyes wide open when it comes to interviewing new therapists, right? Whenever anyone asks me about, finding a therapist, I always say, interview the therapist. They're going to be interviewing you, asking you all kinds of intake and assessment questions. You interview them and ask them, how would you treat this? Or what's the modality you use for that? Or, what's your philosophy on trust building in a therapeutic relationship? I've been burned by many therapists in the past. What kind of things would you do to prevent that from happening? Right? So just understanding like what your rights are, what your boundaries are in the therapeutic relationship, I think can make a big difference. Also thinking back to what helped you build that trust and then sharing that with a new therapist can also be really helpful, or just adapting that to any relationship that you want to have trust in. And then also just reminding yourself that you do have the right to be in relationships and to not be abandoned in that kind of way so abruptly. Even if the therapist had such good intentions, the effect was that this person feels abandoned. And to just remind ourselves like we are lovable, we are workable, we are wanted, like all those kinds of things can kind of help ease the blow a little bit.
Sure. No, I love all that. And like, I guess in the interim to be gentle with yourself, like realize that you're going through like a breakup, so to speak, or you've been dealt a blow and you feel abandoned, and to really like let yourself have a mourning and a grieving process, even if you don't have someone to do that with. And if you do have a friend or a family member or somebody that can be at your side at this moment, that's great. And if not, then use your journal, use nature, use prayer, whatever works for you. Like you said, we don't know this person, but like anything that works would be ideal to help yourself in this situation to just, continue coping as best as you could with understanding that you might be feeling a lot less positive or the way you want to feel or typically would feel if you were, in the treatment that you were appreciating, it sounds like.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I would say also maybe to try a support group in the meantime. Like sometimes there's safety in numbers, so it's like whatever issue that this person was working on in therapy, to find a support group that kind of addresses that so that, again, like if they want to kind of take a pause from meeting with therapists, understandably, then they have that support in a more social kind of way too, so that there's less risk of abandonment.
I love that. I don't know how easy it is to find like a support group, but I'm sure like if there's a will, there's a way. They exist. I think that's a great idea as well, for sure. And it's a lot safer it's a lot easier almost to like trust, because like you said, there's like the numbers piece, and also the fear of abandonment is less because there's the numbers piece. So I think that's a great idea. Amazing.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, Lila Tove.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh my God. Drifting. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Michali. And we will be back next week, hopefully
looking forward to it.
With more rest under my belt. All right. Take care. So good to see you
again.
again.
Bye. Same here.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.